Hi, this is Roger Moore, and you're listening to James Bond Radio.
Hello, and welcome to James Bond Radio, the all-new James Bond Radio. And this week, we are back with Double O Dobby, Mr. Brian Dobson, 002. And this week, we're going to be going back in time a little bit. We're going to be going back in time to June when we visited Piz Gloria and many, many other Bond locations for our OHMSS50 celebrations. Brian was one of those double O's. How you doing, Brian?
I'm good, thanks, Tom. I'm good. Delighted to be back here.
Are you excited to talk about OHMSS50?
Oh God, what a holiday that was! It was just the absolute pinnacle of all things Bond. Can't wait to get stuck in.
It was, mate, wasn't it? I think it's one of those things where I don't think that will ever happen again on any level. It was so special. Not to make anybody who wasn't there feel bad, but you should feel bad if you weren't there because it was that amazing. When you think about 50th anniversary of Majesty's, you got George there, you got all these special guests, you're up in the Alpine Room at Piz Gloria. Does it get any better than that?
The stars aligned from day one, didn't it? You know, to get the cast and crew to revisit it 50 years on, and to go to all those iconic locations was just unrivaled, really. Unrivaled.
Absolutely, it was indeed. Now, obviously, this is our first sort of Tom plus Dobby episode, so this is a new experience for all of us. We're all getting into the grooves and working out how this is all going to go. For the listeners who aren't watching on YouTube, you've got a little Sean Connery on your shoulder, just over your right shoulder.
On my shoulder, and I've got a little John Glenn on that shoulder, I believe. And a bit of that's a bit of a Paul Weston, I think, on that one. Yes, I have.
Very nice.
Sean there, yes, yeah.
I like a man who displays Bond in his home. That's a nice little touch.
Absolutely.
I enjoy that.
Absolutely.
All right, cool. Yeah. So should we have a little bit of theme tune and then we'll get cracking?
Let's go for it.
My name's Bond. James Bond.
Bond. James.
Bond, what do you think you're doing?
Keeping the British end up, sir.
Welcome to James Bond Radio. News, reviews and discussion of all things 007.
Lucy. As you can see, I have no problem with female authority.
Oh, pipe down, 007. Do you expect me to talk?
No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to lie.
All right then, Dobster. So let's cast our minds back to June. We have just gathered at Heathrow Airport. The team has got together. Who have we got? Who joined us? Because there was quite a large party of double O's, wasn't it?
Wow, no, that's something. There was just so many faces that
You can't even remember. That is why I asked you the question to reel off the names, because I was struggling as well. But let's just say there was a lot of us at Heathrow.
The cream of JBR.
Indeed, the cream indeed. We get on the plane. We're all at the back. Chris was seated at the front because he was sort of lucky business class boy. We were all right down the arse end of the plane. And I have to say, man, it was a wonderful thing because I was sitting next to Darren Noble on one side and Becca on the other. And we were just sort of having a little chat, and as we were flying along, and then in the back of sort of you were, I think, 2 rows behind me, and all I could hear throughout the entire sort of 2-hour flight to Zurich was just Bond chat all the time. It was like, what scene is your favourite? Like, what film do you like? And what do you think is from Murren Was that your favourite Pierce or not? The whole fucking trip was just that. And it was a beautiful, beautiful thing. And it was there's something that happens when you have a JBR meetup, which is a lot of people through Facebook and through online chats and all the rest of it. So you feel like you know them, but then there comes a time when you meet them actually in the flesh for the first time, and that was what was happening on that plane, I believe.
Yeah, from start to finish. That is exactly my memories of that flight as well. I remember I was chatting to Rory, I believe, or Rory Cooper, and we just talked Diamonds Are Forever for the entire flight. And it seemed the shortest flight I think I've ever been on, because we talked Bond from beginning to end.
Yeah, absolutely. But so that was lovely. Everybody's kind of getting to know each other on the plane and stuff for real and all the rest of it. Yeah. We arrive in Zurich. It's time to go and get the vans. And it felt like we were sort of like a Spectre kind of team of henchmen. There were like 2 brand new looking Mercedes minivans that we were each in. There was two of us. We were split into two teams for the drive down to Lauterbrunnen and Interlaken and all that to get through to Murren. And we drove down in convoy, didn't we? And that was a nice little touch. How was the drive down for you, man? Because you were in the other van, so I didn't see you on that entire trip.
It was surprisingly sweet. I was thinking, we're in another country, driving on the other side of the road. There's a van holding 8, 9, 10 people. It might be a bit hairy. It seemed to go quite sweet, actually. It was good.
Yeah, I tell you what, that is one of the more beautiful drives in the world, isn't it? It's like once you get down to Interlaken, which is where two lakes meet each other.
Yeah,
and you are in Bond world, aren't you? You kind of as you drive through there, that scenery is unbelievable. You could imagine being a location scout, checking out that area, thinking we've got to make Majesties now. Back in the day, and that's a winner before you've even found Piz Gloria. You know what I mean? It's just that beautiful, isn't it?
Well, I had the old Majesty soundtrack on as we approached it, and as soon as we got into Lauterbrunnen, it was just something else. It was just the culmination of what you've wanted to see for so long. It's brilliant.
Yeah, big time, man. So we get down to Steckelberg. Obviously, what we should point out is good old Martin Mulder is the man that organised the kind of the main event part, which is obviously the whole Piz Gloria thing and all the activities in Murren and all the rest of it. He'd organised a weekend in Lisbon, Portugal, the previous weekend, so it was a double weekender for a lot of people. Did you? You didn't do Portugal, did you?
I didn't do Portugal, but looking at the pictures, I kind of wish I had done as well, because there were some fantastic images.
Yeah, man. I looked at that, and they did that thing where they recreated the beach fight with Terry Mountain and George. Not really the fight, really, but some angles of some shots from the fight. And I instantly shouted an expletive into my computer when I saw that. I was like, why did I not do that trip as well? Yeah, that was wonderful. That was a wonderful moment.
Apparently, that was such a windy day as well. Apparently, they were they were wearing sunglasses to prevent the sand going in their eyes and what have you. But as soon as I saw those images, I thought, missed a trick. Missed a trick.
But yeah, so we got into Steckelberg. We had to go and pick up our goodie bags and wristbands and all the rest of it. And I think more than any other, it felt like a coming together of the world of Bond fandom, wasn't it? Because there was obviously our lot all together, but then once we arrived at the cable car station, there was everybody else as well. We bumped into, I think Uwe was there, and then everybody from the world of Bond. I remember seeing Joe from being James Bond there, and just some faces that you see on the social medias who were involved in Bond.
Absolutely.
And it was like it was like the scene in Thunderball where all the double O's come together. You know what I mean? It's a bit like that.
It was a who's who of the Bond world, really, wasn't it? Yes.
Indeed, yeah, absolutely. So, was that your first trip to Murren? Is that the first time you've been before?
It's not my first trip. I was fortunate enough to go with Mr. Warren Ringham the previous year when he was basically scouting out the organisation, the logistics to do what he was doing at Piz Gloria. So me and Warren had a little previous journey up there, and but I have to say, I remember Warren actually saying to me, he said, is it going to spoil it for you going for the second time? And I said, no, because it's different and we're with different people and it's a different event. And I've got to say, it didn't spoil it whatsoever. It was just that magical feeling once again when I approached it. It's fabulous.
Oh, that's good, man. Because I've said before, when they announced that it was in June, and I thought, oh no, that means it's probably going to be green everywhere, no snow on the ground and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I thought, I need to see it exactly as it is in the film the very first time I see it. So Chris and I went back in February, so it was my second trip as well. But I needed to guarantee the snow would be there. But luckily enough, the snow was still there in June, wasn't it? So it was kind of greener down the bottom, but once you got up in the cable car and you're up the top, it was super snowy.
Yeah,
which is cool. But yeah, so Murren is one of those little, if you didn't know, one of those little villages that they don't allow cars into or anything like that. So it's all, you have to take a little train up there, and it's all kind of, everybody's just walking around. Which is lovely. Probably one of the most picturesque places I've ever been to in all my life.
Oh, undoubtedly.
And the beautiful thing is once you get there, they really celebrate Bond there, don't they? It's not just a place where some Bond happened. You see images of George all over the place, don't you? There's like outside the little leisure centre thing there, there's a big billboard of George with his gun and all the rest of it. And you're in there, and the what makes it even more magical is that obviously you come out of the train station, the Hotel Eiger is directly opposite, which is where we stayed, which is where the film and the film crew and the actors stayed back in the day. And then all throughout the village is just kind of like where, when the film was in town, that's where it all happened. So you're in amongst it, even though, you know, most of the action happens up at Piz Gloria on the top of the peak. But once you're walking around that town, that was sort of like all the behind the scenes stuff, and everything was in that village that was happening. So you kind of, obviously you go to a Bond location, you want to recreate some shots of like scenes from the film and all the rest of it. But once you're in the thick of where all the cast and crew were back in the day as well, walking the same streets, going to the same restaurants to have dinner and all that kind of stuff, that's pretty mind-blowing, isn't it?
Oh, you just had to pinch yourself constantly. And I'll never forget, you know, it'll stay with me forever, of the moment we went to the Hotel Eiger. I walked in there, and as I turned to look at the bar, which is to the left-hand side, the first person I clocked was a certain George Lazenby. And I basically had a double-taking pigeon moment where I looked across and I thought, have I just seen who I think I've seen? It was the first person I saw when I walked in the hotel.
Nice. Did you go and say hello, or did you?
No, at that stage, I tapped Darren on the shoulder and I said, have you seen, actually, you know, who's in the bar area? And he clocked it as well. But I think we wanted to go up and freshen up a bit first before we made, you know, the journey down. But I remember seeing him and just thinking, I'm just going to pinch myself a moment. You know, I'm in Switzerland, I'm in Murren, I'm in Piz Gloria, and I'm looking at George Lazenby. Just amazing.
Yeah, that is magical. So speaking of which then, so we all kind of arrived at the Eiger separately, checked in and all the rest of it. That was very nice. And then the first itinerary thing that night was a sort of black tie dinner at the Palace Hotel, wasn't it? So
it was.
We were all getting ready. I was bunking in. I shared a bed with Chris, literally a double bed with Chris for this entire trip, which, you know, is interesting. But so we got all suited and booted.
Wise going on there.
Indeed, yeah, a little bit of that. But yeah, so we got all suited and booted, heading off to the Palace Hotel. And then as we were walking up the sort of little hill bit, Darren knocked on the window of the hotel bar and he's like, come in, join us for a quick one before we go. So we pop in. All right, yeah, we'll pop in. We stand at the bar. A couple of us hanging out there. Darren knocks me on the shoulder and says, look who's over there behind you. Turn around. And I have my George Lazenby moment. George had just popped down to the bar by himself looking for his mate. Chris goes over to him and says, hello, George, we're here to see you. Shakes him by the hand. I shake him by the hand. Everybody shakes him by the hand. And then good old Paul Jameson offers to buy George a drink. And I think that is the key. If you ever have the opportunity to hang out with George, if you offer to buy him a drink, that is the key to his heart.
I think so.
Yeah. That I think for me, as special as going to Piz Gloria is and all the rest of it, the next hour after that moment is something that I will remember forever, which is basically this. So everybody else on the trip was already at the Palace Hotel. They were having a wonderful time, meal being laid on and some talks of people who lived in the village at the time and all the rest of it. And then we were very late because obviously we're now hanging at the bar with George and we're thinking, well, we should go to the Palace Hotel, but actually this is probably the most amazing thing. So let's just stay here for a minute. And we ended up a full hour of George holding court, chatting, hanging out, talking Bond, hearing all the old stories for a good hour. And the moment that sort of really crystallized it for me is in the little hotel bar. They had like a little white projector screen that had just projected Majesties on loop the whole weekend. So you'd go in there and the sound was on there like low in the background. So it was just constantly on loop. And I asked George a question and I said to him, I was like, George, something I've always wondered, mate. You and Diana Rigg, did that ever happen for real? And then of course he's like, well, let me tell you a story. So he's looking at me and he's telling me the story of that, you know, maybe they might have had a little bit of slap and tickle, but they didn't, you know, go the whole shenanigans.
Yeah.
And that story we've all heard before about, you know, they might have got together, but he was having it away with one of the ladies on set and she saw it and, you know, then they didn't get on after that and all that kind of stuff. We've heard that story before, but to hear it directly from the horse's mouth was a wonderful thing.
Yeah, totally.
Over his shoulder at that point, as he's telling me that story, is that screen. And while he's telling that story, he's in bed with Ruby Bartlett. going, "Oh, Hilly, don't." And she's going, "Oh, Hilly," and he's, "Oh, Ruby, don't be so silly," and all this kind of stuff over his shoulder. That is happening, and I'm like, this is the most surreal moment of my entire life.
Completely. That's exactly what I thought as well. I just thought, well, is it going to get any better than this? To be honest, it was a cracking start.
Yeah, mate. So we heard every story you can possibly imagine. We heard probably too many details for certain stories, as you can probably imagine.
Yes.
If you're listening, you've heard George speak before at these kinds of things, and he likes to go a little bit too detailed when it comes to the ladies and things like that.
Yes.
Yes.
After that, Paul Jameson's double Scotch, he loosened up even a bit more, if I do recall.
Very much did, didn't he? Yeah. And I remember seeing him later in the evening as well, and he was absolutely rat-assed as well in the hotel bar. So it was. You can imagine if you play James Bond and then you hang out with a load of Bond fans, all the Bond fans just want to buy you a drink all night. So it was. God only knows the volume of units he was knocking back over those 2 weekends.
Yeah.
But yeah, what was that moment like for you, man? Because I remember sort of like clocking everybody's sort of like looking at each other out the side of their eyes, thinking, "Holy shit, is this really happening?" And then I think it might have been me. I jumped on the little sort of group chat on Facebook, and I sort of put out a beacon to all the JBR lot saying, "Get to the bar at the Eiger right now. We're hanging out with George." So others would sort of like drift in over time. I remember seeing David West walk in. He came in a bit later, and that dude the entire weekend just had the biggest shit-eating grin on his face the whole time. But at that specific moment, it was like a magical thing, just walking through and seeing George there.
Exactly that, Tom. I just remember the bit. There was probably 2 or 3 of us originally talking to George, and then as more people came in, they were all just as he walked straight in, and then all of a sudden it became, I don't know, 15, 20 of us, however much it was, just all hanging on every word he said. But that was a pretty special moment, because I just thought, well, is it going to get any better?
Now, tell me about this. Tell me about your thought process, because my thought process went, when he started telling all the stories, I've got to get this on camera. I've got to get some photos. I've got to get a photo of George. And then my immediate thought after that was, actually, no, I shouldn't do that, because this is not a moment where George is like performing. Like he is in a way, because he's holding court in a pub, and there is an element of that. But it's not like he's on stage doing a Q&A. It's like we've caught George where all of the people who were there for this whole weekend are somewhere else. So this is like a quiet moment for George. He's just hanging out while everybody's out elsewhere having dinner, and we've got this special moment for him. And my thought was, I don't want to ruin it and make him think, oh fucking hell, I've got to pose for selfies now. So I kind of didn't, agree. And I kind of left it. So what did you think about that?
Exactly the same, because I just suddenly thought, if I go over and start, let's get the picture, sign this, I just thought that's fanboyism that he doesn't want on that particular moment. Let's just chat. And I think it was all the better for that. I know John Ward got a sneaky picture of himself with George. Good on you, John. But I think it was one of those moments where we just needed to listen to what the guy said, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I think for me that was the very first night, and I think that set the bar incredibly high, didn't it? To be hanging out with James Bond, had almost like our own little private audience with him, and what a way to start. But then, so he'd obviously come down looking for his mate, and then we kind of hijacked him for a bit, and then his mate showed up, and we were hanging out with him. He was a very nice guy as well. Mm-hmm. And then obviously, after about an hour of chit chat, we thought we'd best go to this dinner. Mm-hmm. So we kind of rocked up a little bit late, had the dinner, and then there was basically they had a little stage set up, and throughout the evening they had some people that were either had sort of worked on the film in some capacity. They were locals, basically. They were either kind of running around doing little jobs for the filmmakers or whatever, or they were just there and had sort of memories to talk about, which was lovely. And again, it's just nice being in a room full of appreciative Bond people. We're all there suited and booted, everybody's hanging out, having a good old chat, having a good time, man. Did you enjoy that dinner?
I loved the dinner, yeah, and exactly what you just said. There was, it became, instead of a local feel, a more of an international feel. And I remember I was on the same table talking to Jeff Wybo of Station C Canada, I think it was, and we had a good chat about the US and the Canadian Bond vibe as opposed to the UK one, and it became a bit more, well, of an international flavour, and that was special. That was definitely special.
Nice. Good stuff.
Yeah.
I think so after that, I had a reasonably early one because obviously we'd flown over that morning.
I'll come on to that in a moment.
Now, okay, so we went back to the Eiger, and then there was, the bar was in full swing. I popped in there. George was still there. He was hanging out, obviously considerably more loose, shall we say, than he was earlier. So he'd obviously had a few more drinks in. Loads of people hustling and bustling, and I thought, you know what, I don't want to burn myself out in the first night. It's been a long day. I had to get up at like 3:00 in the morning to get to the airport in time and all that shit. I'm going to have an early one tonight, recharge, and make sure I'm full capacity for the weekend. So I went to bed. What did you do?
Well, I should have taken a leaf out of your book, Tom, because I did the polar opposite.
Right.
I ended up chatting with George a little bit more. Drinks were going down. I think it was a combination of being inebriated by the fact that I was in Piz Gloria with George. There was, all the great and the good of JBR, and it went, completely went to my head a bit. So I ended up smoking cigars, drinking brandy, really, really living the Bond lifestyle up a bit. And I remember sitting on, I was with Rory and John sitting on the balcony. We're both sitting like Roger and Cubby with the most enormous cigar you've ever seen. Nice. And I think we sat there till about 5 a.m.
Very nice.
And so that was quite the start to the proceedings. I have to say I missed the following event the next morning. But wow, that was quite the start.
Nicely done, man. Yeah, cool. So next day then, Saturday, we've got a bunch of activities going on. So you missed the morning. So what was the morning? Because I think I might have missed that as well.
The morning was a tour of Grindelwald, I think it was.
I definitely did miss that. Yeah, I didn't do that. It was a little bus tour, wasn't it?
Yeah, I remember Darren was quite keen to go on that one, but he gave me a bit of a shove, and I said, not a chance.
Now, were you sharing a bed with Darren? Because I know you were sharing a room. Pretty were you much in a double bed together? Big spoon or little spoon?
However the cutlery arranged itself.
Just do what came naturally. Very nice. Cool. Now, I tell you what, I would say, as wonderful as this weekend was, and it was, I think I don't know whether I can say it's my favorite moment, but I would say definitely, I think it might have, I don't know, it might be meeting George and hanging out at the bar. Anyway, one of my all-time memorable moments was the helicopter flight.
Yeah,
we did that on the Saturday.
Correct.
And it was your good self. It was me. It was Chris. It was Bootle, and it was Darren. We all went in the same helicopter together.
That's the one.
Had you ever been in a chopper before?
I hadn't. I hadn't had the experience. No.
Me either. So that was really cool. So basically, we go along to the little helicopter sort of port, whatever you would call that. And then we all get in the chopper. We all put the old headphones on, and what he did was he kind of flew. If you can imagine, like the town we're in is at the bottom of like a huge mountainous valley. So you're right down the bottom. That's where we took off. Huge mountains either side. He took us up, flew us right to the top of one of those mountains. This thing's fucking huge. Landed, allowed us to get out and hang out on the top of this huge mountain, looking over everywhere. Spent a good 2 or 3 minutes, not long up there. Photo opportunity. Jumped back in the chopper. Then we headed over and sort of like buzzed Piz Gloria. We did like a little spin of Piz Gloria, and then we went back down. So I would imagine it was probably a 20-minute flight, 25 minutes maybe tops. It wasn't the longest flight in the world, but I think for me that was one of the most amazing experiences I've ever had. It was so wonderful. What did you make of it? Did you like it?
Pretty much exactly the same thing. I think the the speed at which we got up into the mountains, and the pilots saying, "Oh, you've got the Matterhorn directly above you, the Eiger," and it was just incredible. And I'll never forget that moment where he turned the helicopter in towards Piz Gloria. And that was just like, this is a culmination of something I want to do for years,
Yeah, it very much. I don't know about you, but it very much felt like the scene when they're on their way to Piz Gloria to rescue Tracy, and they're talking over the radio, talking about the Mercy flight and all that kind of stuff. It felt like that. I felt like we were a team of double O's on a mission there.
Big style, big style.
But I tell you what though, and I would say this perfectly exemplifies the differences between myself and Chris. Chris was sitting up front for the second part of the journey after we took off from the first little stop. And then the pilot took it on himself to do a bit of acrobatics and have a little bit of fun.
Oh, I love that. I adored that.
Which for me is, I wasn't comfortable, right?
I remember your groans.
He takes off from the top of the mountain and did this sort of thing where he kind of like swung it from side to side. So there's like loads of G-force and stuff. Chris is up front immediately going, "Yay, this is great." I'm in the back holding on to anything that's solid, going, No, I don't like it. I don't like it. And it was, yeah, I'm not a man who's comfortable with things like that, but it was fun. I enjoyed it on some level. But yeah, man, I think going up in a chopper like that, and I remember thinking, shit, like I've never been in a chopper before. Don't know what it's going to be like. Hope it's not going to be too scary. Blah blah blah. And I remember there was one point after we'd taken off, and we're heading directly towards the mountain, and the pilot kept chatting to. Were you up front in the first?
Yeah,
leg,
I was up front in the first one. Yeah.
And he's like looking at you and chatting away, and I'm looking at him and thinking, you best keep your fucking eyes on that mountain, mate, because we're getting a little bit too close for Tommy's comfort here. Of course he did in the end, but it was when you're in somebody's driving the car and they're chatting to you and they're not looking at the road as much as you would like. That's how I felt. And then I remember we went over this tiny little turbulent little bit where it was a little bit bumpy. I remember Darren and I just kind of locked eyes at the side of our eyes together and just gave each other a little nervous grin. And we were like, it's going to be all right. And then, I think I needed somebody to hold my hand a little bit through that. But
you had a bit of Roger and Stacey in the shower moment. There's a few, ooh.
Yeah. Ooh. Yeah. But yeah, that helicopter flight, I would recommend to anybody. Even if you're a bit scared of helicopters, I would say do it. And everybody I spoke to said the same thing. Everybody said that was a highlight of the entire weekend.
Definitely.
So, yeah, that was a beauty, wasn't it? We got some photos of that. We will post it up on the old Facebook to match up with today's episode, so you can see what that was like.
And just stopping in the snow wherever we stopped, that was just the air quality was just unbelievably clean, and just walking around in that was just
it is a truly magical place. That is, it really is unbelievable, especially when you factor in the whole thing about there not being any cars. It really is its own little bubble. It's a lovely place, and I must say it is very expensive in the sense that you Switzerland is, but you go into a restaurant, you get the food isn't that great, I would say. It's pretty average, but it also costs a fortune. Everything's kind of expensive there, but by the same token, it is wonderful. It's a beautiful place to be, and you've got to go at some point.
Yeah, well, I ran out of Swiss francs at one point, so I had to make an emergency trip.
I bet you did. Yeah, I'm not surprised. Yeah, I'm sure we all did at some point.
So yeah, it was pricey, but obviously worth it.
Indeed. So I think that night was the sort of, I would call that the main event. Really, it was. Everybody heads up to Piz Gloria. The whole shebang's going on. There's a big dinner going on. Cue the music playing at the end. All the guests are there. You imagine the rotating restaurant part. It was basically table after table of Bond fans from all around the world. You had the sort of central table that George was sitting on. And then it's sort of like the room that's the sort of outer part of the ring is the bit that rotates, isn't it? So there's like an inner. Is it the outer part or the inner part? I can't remember now. It's like there's a part. There's the inner. Well, which bit was it? It was the tables, wasn't it? That's the bit that rotates. That's right. Yeah.
Just before you get onto that bit, Tom. Just when we're going on the journey to Piz Gloria. I remember being in the lift, in the cable car rather, and the atmosphere was just, it was electric. You could feel the tension, and everybody's looking at each other to say, "This is a culmination of something we've all been wanting to do for so long." And I remember Darren tapped me on the shoulder and basically said, "I feel like I could almost cry because this is," and I knew exactly what I meant. What he was basically saying was, "We've waited so long to do this moment, and here we are." And I just remember that it was a sense of anticipation, even though I'd been before. It had a different connotation when we approached it.
Well, that's it. I think that the difference is the fact that Chris and I went back in February, and that was wonderful, and that was magic, and that was the first time either of us had laid eyes on the place. But when you've got all of those people who are absolute 100% solid Bond fans all coming together for this one event, it's that sense of anticipation as well, that people have flown in from all over the shop to be there.
Yeah.
And then a lot of those people would never have even laid eyes on Piz Gloria before. And the great thing about that is you go up, and the kind of first stop is Berg, basically. Another mountain, another peak, and you'll see pictures of the actors and the crew and everybody back in the day eating there. There's like a little restaurant there, like a big deck that you can stand out on, and they had like a little champagne and canapes reception for us to go to first. So that's where we're hanging out. Everybody's suited and booted. But then in the distance, you can see the next peak, which is obviously Piz Gloria. So you can see a little tiny little sort of round bit, and you're like, there it is over there. And the thing that's so magical about it is then you get on the next cable car, and then obviously you make the ascent to Piz Gloria. But you're almost, it's not like you're going really high, steep. You're almost on an even keel with it when you're at Berg. It's a little bit higher. But you're sort of looking at Piz Gloria the whole time, and you're kind of going horizontally across between the two. So you have this wonderful moment where it starts off this little tiny blip in the distance, and then the closer you get, the bigger it gets, and you just start to make out, and you're like, oh, there's the helipad, and there's the circular bit, and all the rest of it. And that the anticipation of that is incredible, and especially when you're in that cable car, it's starting to get a bit dark. You turn around, everybody's in dicky bows and fine evening wear and all the rest of it. And it's just boyish, childish grins everywhere you look. And it's just, that is the magical thing. That is the magical thing of sharing an experience like that with other like-minded people. That is the beautiful moment. And I'm not surprised that Darren wanted to shed a little tear. I'm surprised. Did he actually have a little tear, or did he?
I didn't clock him to see if he did, but I wouldn't be surprised if he did.
No, I wouldn't be surprised either. But yeah, so we arrive, we go in there, we see where our tables are. There's a little casino set up, and everybody's just hanging out, aren't they? You've got the stars, you've got I would call them stars as well. So John Glenn's sitting there having a pint or whatever, and it's just quite, again, a surreal moment to be at the top of Piz Gloria, hanging out with all these people. I saw Silvana Henriques. She was having a little gamble at the table, and it was just like, this is such a weird experience, but it is wonderful at the same time.
Oh yeah, it was magical.
But yeah, now I would say out of that night, that was wonderful. Obviously, lots of Bond banter to be had, all the rest of it, exploring Piz Gloria a little bit, going out onto the helipad, watching the sunset and all that kind of stuff. All extremely, extremely magical.
Yeah.
But then I think where it all came to a head is obviously when Cue the Music were playing. They didn't play in the actual Alpine room itself, because if you imagine, the room is rotating, so that makes things very, very difficult. You can imagine the band setting up there, and then it would just going around in circles the whole night. It wouldn't quite have the same effect. So they were kind of like downstairs, one floor down, setting up in there. And I remember everybody sort of bundling in there and watching, and it wasn't a usual typical set from Cue the Music. It was obviously the hits, but a very Majesty's flavored thing. There were lots of cues in there specifically for that particular night. And I just remember looking around and talking about people crying. There were just grown men weeping. There genuinely were dudes with tears in their eyes.
Yeah, definitely.
And it was almost a religious moment. It was that perfect. When you think about it, that will never happen again. And it was such a snapshot in time where all of these people are together up at Piz Gloria. George is there. Loads of the Bond royalty are in the room. Cue the music are up there, bashing through a never before heard set. It was just such a perfect moment. It's difficult to sort of really describe it on a podcast.
It is, and my emotional moment, I never forget it, was during the interval. I think Warren did a 15-minute interval or something like that, maybe 20 minutes, and I decided to go outside onto the Walk of Fame, and there was a little bit of a seated area beside one of the cardboard cutouts for George, and I just sat there with my back towards it, and the sunset was going down, so I was watching the sunset over the mountains, having just listened to the first half of, as you say, all the hits, and I just thought, doesn't really get much better than this, you know. And it was, I just had about 10-15 minutes just purely to myself, and that was quite an emotional sledgehammer, to be honest. And then I went back in, obviously, for the second half of it, and it was a moment in time where you just pinched yourself and think, everything you've wanted to do is culminated in this.
Yeah, absolutely. It really was that. When you think of, I had a moment like that back in February when we went, and it was just, sitting. Chris and I talks about it for so long about going, and then finally actually being there, and the snow being on the ground, and it being absolutely perfect. And we were super lucky as well when we first went. The visibility was amazing, so you could just see for miles.
Yeah,
it was literally perfect. And it's just like, damn, it doesn't get any better than this. But when, like I say, when you've got a whole shebang of everybody culminating in the one place at the same time for that whole thing, and then cue the music there, it was just a beautiful thing. I remember turning around and seeing good old Tom Ryan stood there, tears in his eyes, just being like, this is the most brilliant thing ever.
Yeah.
And it was a wonderful thing. I didn't cry because I'm hard, Brian. I'm hard. So I didn't do it, but I felt like I could have done.
But everybody was the same. You were going. I was going up to everybody, and we were talking about it and saying, "Can you believe we are where we are on this night of all nights?" It was, as you say, it was bordering on religious.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I felt like people could have spoken in tongues and just fallen over. It was that good. Yeah. It's a beautiful thing.
Never be repeated.
Now, talk to me about this. So Sunday, I didn't do this bit, but there was the autograph session, wasn't there? So back at the Hotel Eiger, I didn't do this. I must admit, I'm not much of an autograph person. I've got a few autographed bits and bobs. I've got a few prized possessions, which I absolutely adore. But I'm not one of these that goes and collects everybody and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. But so tell me about that, because I don't even really know much about what happened.
The Hotel
Give me the
Eiger.
lowdown.
Yeah, the Hotel Eiger had everyone set up for the autographs. So there was obviously George, there was John Glenn, there was Stephen Saltzman, Sylvana, basically the cast and crew that were invited over. And there was a huge queue from early. I think it started about 10 o'clock in the morning, and there was a huge queue building from about 9:30 onwards. And I thought, well, I can't come this way, have my Majesty's book, and not get it signed. So I actually got hold of my Charles Helfenstein's book.
Oh, mate!
And George put his signature right in the centre.
Look at that!
Yeah. So I thought, and then I also got a sign from Stephen Saltzman and John Glenn on the front as well. So
very nice.
But that was just. That was a surreal experience as well, getting to sort of meet everybody and talk on it. I had a chat with John Glenn actually, and it was a lot more relaxed, a lot more laid back, and I think just
what did you chat to John about?
Well, I just said obviously that I was, personally I was a big, Daylights and License to Kill fan, so we ended up going off on a bit of a tangent with Timothy, but which was probably the wrong time and place to do it, but there you go.
Yeah, well, tell me this, right? Because isn't there the word on the street that they had a little bit of a falling out after License to Kill those two? Did you get any juice?
I didn't get any juice, but he basically sort of was implying that there was a bit of a parting of the ways after that film, and he didn't give any gossip away, but he was certainly a bit more guarded about it, maybe.
Okay, so what did you learn anything about Timmy in those two films? Because you are a Timmy man, aren't you? He is your number one.
I do. I mean, as they've all brought something to the table, but for me, he's still Fleming's Bond. And we just had a good chat really about the making of those two films, because he particularly rates License as his favourite of the 80s Bonds that he did, and he was just saying that the production was a bit of a nightmare in terms of the shoot and working in Florida Keys and what have you. But that was nice to actually just chat with him as a
little moment.
Just a bit more relaxed.
Beautiful stuff. So Sunday, bit more relaxed. I think loads of people were doing all sorts of different bits and bobs, weren't they? You and a few of the other boys had a little bit of a football game. I was hanging out back at the hotel.
Wow.
All sorts of stuff. A little bit of a dinner in the hotel at the end. That was a kind of sort of farewell for the weekend, wasn't it? Because everybody was there. George was there. All the stars and that were down in the hotel bar.
Yeah, well, I'll just rewind a little bit back on that afternoon. So myself and Chris and Paul Jameson and Rory decided that we would sit Roger Moore style by the poolside with a bottle of champagne, and just overlook the mountains, quaff whatever we could quaff, and take all the scenery in. And we sat there and we had a real good giggle and a really good laugh about everything, and it really brought everything into perspective. And then afterwards, basically somebody said, "There's a bit of a football match going on," and I mean, it was 6,000 feet above sea level. It was 30-degree heat. We'd had 5 or 6 glasses of champagne each, and we still ended up playing 90 minutes. How we did that, I just do not know. But but that was special as well. For different reasons, but it was special as well.
Yeah. Beautiful stuff, man. Yeah, not being a football man, I didn't join. So
no,
I was.
The thing is, I'm not at all. I'm not a footballer at all.
Nice one. But yeah, man. So that dinner was lovely that evening. There were some of our party were kind of leaving. Some of the JBR family were going home that night, and then obviously what happened after that was our sort of like extended JBR trip. It wasn't going to just be a weekend for us. We were going to make it more of a full-blown thing. Now, what some people might not know is that, you've got Switzerland right there. You've got Piz Gloria and all those wonderful Majesty's locations. But you also have a million other Bond locations all within a couple of hours' drive of each other. So you've got the Goldeneye Dam, you've got the Furka Pass, you've got Goldfinger's factory, you've got Lake Como. That's all roughly in the same area. So that was our plan for the following day. But before we kind of left the Switzerland angle, we went out for a drive in the country, didn't we? And we went to the barn. We found the barn where Bond and Tracy sort of have their little proposal scene. Now, what I loved about this was the dude who came to meet us was the nicest dude I've ever met in all my life. He's a cheesemaker, right? So he has this farm. He makes a bit of cheese down there. And one thing I never knew, which I learned, was this dude's dad played Blofeld in the film. Now, you might say, what's going on? Obviously, Telly Savalas played Blofeld in the film. But there is basically, still to this very day, in the barn door is a little hole, like a little notch in the wood, a little hole there. And through that little notch in the barn door, the filmmakers shot one little scene with Blofeld basically finding the barn. If you can imagine, there's a shot, you've got Blofeld skiing down the hill towards the barn with all of his goons behind him. And that dude who's playing Blofeld is that fella's dad. So it was like a long sort of distance shot. He's got a little bald cap on, and there it is. And that little hole is still there, isn't it? That little hole in the door.
It was exactly like, from 1968, 69 when it was filmed. It was completely and utterly unchanged, and that was another magical moment, because when he was mentioning about his dad being in the film, and I look back, and you could see the bit where the Spectre henchmen come down on the skis, and I just thought, it's unchanged. It's exactly the same.
Yeah, well, obviously it was green, so there was no snow on the ground
sure.
at that particular point. But when you look at even the fence that runs down the left sort of portion of the shot, even the fence was exactly the same.
Mhm.
All the trees are in the same spot. It is exactly the same spot. It was crazy.
Yeah.
So that was cool. He was as good as gold. He was so excited to sort of like show us everything and
Gerhard,
you know,
Gerhard.
yeah, Gerhard, that's it.
Yeah.
What a top geezer.
Mm.
And then he took us down into his little basement, showed us some of his cheese. We had a little cheese tasting, didn't we? We all took some
And
cheese.
then the obligatory picture with the block of cheese.
Absolutely, very nice. And we did a little bit of a recreation there, didn't we? Where I've still got loads of footage from that trip that I've not done anything with. I've got to find some time to like edit it together and make a vlog of it.
Mm.
But we opened the barn doors, didn't we, and recreated the scene of the car arriving late at night. And we did that with the power of human ingenuity, where we had about 6 fully grown men pretending to be a car. Some of us with the wheels, some of us with the the seats and all the rest of it.
It wasn't the highest quality JBR production ever. That one.
No, it wasn't, was it? But it was wonderful. And the great thing about that is that there were, again, grown men crying, but for very different reasons. At that time, there was literally men making wheel motions with their arms and making car sounds with their voice to illustrate what we were doing.
Yeah,
obviously completely ridiculous, but that's the name of the game, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, completely.
Yeah,
that was just a magical experience, definitely.
Yeah, it was beautiful. So next thing on the agenda, then we went to Bern, didn't we? We drove all the way to Bern. Lovely town, must be said.
Yeah,
very beautiful,
beautiful Bern. Yeah, definitely.
And then we did the next kind of Majesty's locations with Gumbold's office, which was wonderful. So what I like about that is, so you've got down the street, you've got Gumbold's office, the exterior. So you've got that little archway where Gumbold comes out, he checks his pockets. Has he forgotten something? Oh, no, he hasn't. And off he goes, right? That little sequence is there. The door still looks more or less exactly the same.
Yeah. So.
Then down the street, you've got the hotel, which is the balcony. So basically when Bond goes out into the balcony in that whole sequence, that balcony is still there, obviously. And what I love about that is the hotel really embrace the Bond angle, don't they? Some just ignore it, but they really embrace it. And there's a nice little plaque on the wall outside the room with George on it and saying what it is. They had a copy of Majesty's in the room for us to watch. And then we obviously all went out and recreated the shot of George looking over the end of the balcony and all the rest of it. That was a magical moment. I like that.
Oh, it was just wonderful because again, it was exactly like you remember from the film, and I mean, and then we ended up watching a film on a Majesty's Secret Service or something like that on the same day.
It was. I did wonder what the locals must have thought, because there was basically, I mean, how many of us were there? There was probably, is it like 12 of us?
Yeah,
do you think?
Yeah, maybe a bit more. Maybe a bit more, was there?
Yeah, I think maybe it was. They're all bundled into this one hotel room. And you must, as a civilian passerby, you must be thinking, what on earth is going on in there? There's some questionable behaviour happening. Don't know what it is. Probably don't want to know. But yeah, it was a beautiful thing. And so if you cast your mind back to watching Majesty's, he walks out onto the balcony, and there's all that construction work going on across the street, isn't there? So if you look back at that footage and then you see those buildings completed now, like they are the buildings that they were building back then. It's not like it's completely redeveloped and it's a whole different street.
Yeah.
Those buildings you see being constructed in Majesty's are now the finished article, and they're over there, which that's quite an interesting thing in itself. And I know Bootle is an engineer by trade, and Bootle is very good at lining up photographs so they're absolutely spot on with the film version. He has that analytical precision mind. That he did a good job there, and I think every single one of us walks away with a bang on George photo.
100%. It was. I think I sort of got the still from the film and lined it up with the picture I got as well, and it was bang on as well. But that was pretty special.
So trip to Bern is on the cards for anybody who wants to go. I would highly recommend Bern, because not only for the Bond locations, it's an absolutely beautiful place as well. Lovely place. Yeah, it was well worth a trip just for a weekend away.
Yeah, I took a bit of a swim, a moonlight swim with Chris.
Very nice.
And
how romantic.
Yeah. And no, it was the I remember that river that I can't remember what it's called now, and it was just so fast flowing, that river. Me, Bootle, Chris just jumped off the bridge and went for it, and that was just a kind of a surreal experience as well.
Yeah, the cool thing about that, I'd never seen that before, is it's one of those fast flowing rivers, and it is a recreational thing that the locals will do, whereby the river will sort of run all around the town, and you can enter the river at one point, and the current will take you, and then you can just sort of get off the river at some point downstream. And it's kind of, a lot of people will do that, won't they? They'll just kind of get in the river and just kind of float away. And then it sounds highly dangerous, but it's not. It's kind of like, it's just this really cool thing. You kind of have to kind of see it to kind of get what I mean, really. But it's such a fast flowing river. It's more of like almost like a little fairground ride that you just get on naturally and just take you away. It's nice.
Yeah. That was again another highlight.
Indeed, it was. Now, coming sort of getting on towards the end of the trip, we knocked a lot of stuff off the old to-do list, didn't we? In a few short days. So after Bern, back in the old van, we did Auric Enterprises. We did Andermatt, which is where the petrol station where he drops off Tilly is, and also the hotel where the cast and crew stayed. That was lovely because they had the Sean Connery room where Sean stayed, and they let us go in and have a look at it, which was nice. They're another one that embrace it. Big old Goldfinger poster on the wall. Chris even had a go on the Connery toilet, which was lovely.
There was a lot of prints on the wall as well that I'd never seen before, so obviously, it wasn't this commercial. But I remember it was particularly good lunch there as well, actually.
Yeah. It was, and we sat at the Bond table, didn't we? And they've got pictures of Connery and Tilly Masterson and all the rest of it sitting around this very same table. It's the exact same table, looks exactly the same. That was wonderful. Obviously, we went and did the old petrol station and all the rest of it. And then that day, I would say, is of note because that was the bungee jump day, wasn't it, Brian? Now, this is something that I've wrestled with personally because I think I would love to do that bungee jump, but I also know myself, and I also know that I'm not very brave when it comes to jumping off very high things. Now, I think there's something about Chris that's very different to normal humans because I know there was a bunch of you who were like, yeah, I'm booked up. I'm going to do the jump, right? There were some of us who were like, I might do it once we get there. I'm going to have a look at it first. I want to check it out and then make my decision.
Gary Bootle was one of those.
Gary Bootle was one of those.
He said, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And then when we approached, he said, sod that for a game. So
no, he actually said, fuck that in very loud tones. So I remember the moment very specifically. He was sitting behind me in the minivan. We turned around the corner, laid eyes on the dam in the distance, and it looked massive. And that was it. As soon as he laid eyes on it, that was a game over for Bootle. And I don't blame him one bit. Now, why I think Chris is a different human is because if I'd have booked onto that, not only would I have been nervous the whole time, I'd have been nervous about it for the full year leading up to the trip, right? And I said to Chris that morning, I was like, "You're a bit nervous today because you're going to do the bungee jump." He's like, "No, I'll be fine. We're driving, we're doing all these locations. The next destination is the bungee jump. So it's like we're an hour away from the bungee jump." And I said to Chris, "You nervous yet?" Nah, not at all. It'll be fine, mate. We see the dam, Bootle shitting his pants in the back seat. I say to Chris, right, you've got to feel some butterflies and rumbles right now. Are you feeling nervous? Nah, not at all, mate. We're standing at the top. We're looking over the top. We're standing at the spot where Bond hooks his feet on and jumps over. I'm looking down. My knees are going a bit wobbly. I say to Chris, "You must be feeling a little bit nervous by now, surely." He's like, "Nah, absolutely not." And he was, I fully believe him because he did not look agitated at all. There wasn't an ounce of him that was like, you can tell somebody's sort of maybe breathing a little bit deeper than usual and sort of like just, you can feel somebody's energy. And that was not him. Completely. He was absolutely calm the whole time.
In contrast to that, I was okay about it. But I remember on that day when we actually rocked up there. Sorry, on the morning when we got up, I thought it's bungee jump day. So there was certainly a sense of foreboding as well. So when we rocked up there at the dam, I suddenly thought, oh, this is this is it now. So I definitely had that feeling.
It must be said, I know you had that feeling because you went. Did you go last? You were one of the last to go, weren't you?
Yeah. Fourth out of five. Yeah.
4 out of 5. So I remember. So I'm stood at the top, and I'm nervous for everybody else, and even just thinking about it now, I feel a little bit nervous. Right? Basically, Chris climbs up there. He stands on the edge, and he just executes the perfect swan dive.
Oh yeah,
and it's again, it's
perfect.
like I saw some of you boys stand at the edge, and you're sort of looking down, and there's some controlled breathing going on.
Completely,
not Chris. He just gets up there like he's making a cup of tea and just having a walk in the park.
Yeah,
nothing, not an ounce of nerves. Executes the perfect swan dive. Off he goes. And then I remember as the other jumpers were going, I remember it was you were going to be the next. So it was the third jump. And I caught sight of you at the bottom of the steps up to the frame, and you were having a little moment to yourself. You had your hands on there, and I could see the sort of like controlled pregnancy breathing, I would call it. It was that moment, and I felt for you, man. Thought, Brian, maybe I should go over and like G him up a bit. And I thought, no, I think Brian needs a bit of alone time here. He needs some time to psych himself up and do this because it's such an unnatural thing to throw yourself off a dam.
Absolutely.
But kudos to you, man, because I don't think, and Rory said the same. Rory said, I would love to do this, but I couldn't plan it. I would need to go. I would need loads of my mates to do it first. And I would need to the conditions would have to be perfect where I'd be like, all right, I'm going to do it. I've got to do it now. I can't think about it. I've just got to do it and go. And obviously you had to book in advance and all the rest of it. So that wasn't available, thankfully. And yeah, but you went and you did it. What is that like when you stand at the edge of that precipice and it is fucking high? What's going through your mind? What are you feeling?
You're quite right. Exactly what you said. Where I had a bit of a moment to myself, and I was thinking, look, I've put my name down for this. I have wanted to do it, but now the realization is on me. We're about to do it, and I remember walking along the gangplank, whatever you want to call it, just before you throw yourself off. And as I walked along there, I could feel the legs getting a little bit heavier. And a little bit, there's a bit of a wobble going on there, and I thought, no, let's do it. You said you were going to do it, let's do it. But that moment of, I remember the guy who was, kind of helping said, don't look down, and that's the first thing you're going to do. So I had a little glance, and you can't even see the bottom, so it was just look straight ahead, and and then obviously fall, but. Yeah, that was a moment there where I thought, what am I doing here? But I've got to say, the adrenaline from it was just intense. I wanted to do it immediately after.
Now, so tell me this, right? What is that moment like? Because I know myself, and if I'm stood out there, no matter how much I'm like psyching myself out to be as cool as Bond, I'm going to stand on that edge, and I don't think I have it in me to take that step off the edge. I just don't. My brain would take over, and I don't think I could do it. That moment when the decision is made and you've stepped forward into nothingness, what is that like? Is it? Did you just have to turn off your brain?
Yeah.
Or what? What is that moment
pretty
like?
Much. I just remember thinking, okay, you're here now. Literally, don't look back. Just let it happen. So
that was a nice one. I like that.
So I just sort of tipped my body forward and so yeah. But you're right. There's a part of you thinking, what are you doing? Because this isn't natural. There's no what you're doing isn't what you would normally do. So definitely there was a sort of feeling of hesitancy.
Mate, I was spending most of that. I mean, I remember when Chris did it, Rory positioned himself at the far end of the dam. And so we were all taking shots from different angles. So I have the footage. I'm going to knock together a little vlog of the bungee jump section. Rory got an amazing shot that looks exactly like the film. There's that wide shot and you just see the little stick man of Bond just making the jump all the way down. He's got that for I guess, all the jumps. So who did the jump? It was Chris. It was Tom Stanya. It was Sam Allen, Jason Carr, and your good self.
That's the ones. Yeah.
And I have to say, massive shout out to every single one of those gentlemen because they are braver than I am. That's for sure.
It
an
was,
amazing
and getting
thing.
back to Chris there, he, as you say, so cool doing it. He even turned and did the Quantum of Solace gun pulls. As
He
yeah,
did,
and I
didn't he?
thought
Yeah,
fair play for even thinking about that. You know?
yeah. I mean, I wish I had that shit in me. There's an ease that Chris has with that kind of stuff that just will never be me, and I accept it, and I'm not going to fight it. But it's that I admire that about that dude, because he is so comfortable in the most dangerous situations like that.
Yeah,
it's a
yeah.
wonderful thing.
You would have had a stunt double really for that, wouldn't you? Yeah,
I would have had many stunt doubles, man. I would be worse than Roger at the end of the Rogers tenure, man. It would have been fucking A View to a Kill times 10. Yeah, absolutely. Fucking hell spells. Anyway, so bungee jump done. We head to Lake Como, just down the road, a couple of hours drive. Wonderful stuff. Again, you wonder why it wasn't used in Bond before, because you drive down into that amazing part of the world, and you just feel like you're in Bond. The lovely thing about that as well is you don't have to pay the exorbitant Switzerland prices for everything as well. So that's lovely. Lake Como, somewhere I definitely want to go back to. Nice, super chilled, sleepy kind of place. The sort of place that you just go to kind of chill out and kind of relax. So we had our little villa. We had a couple of villas between us, didn't we? That we all stayed in. And then obviously just down the road, you got Villa del Balbianello, I think that's how you say it, which is where Bond recovers with Vesper. He's got his little wheelchair. Down the road a little bit, you've got Mr. White's villa and all that kind of stuff. So that was what we were there to see. That was wonderful. Nice little time in the villa. We head down on the Thursday to the villa to do a nice little tour. Unfortunately, the heavens opened and pissed down, so we kind of saw it, didn't we? We saw the spot where Bond sits in his wheelchair, the little sort of walkway where the Swiss banker gentleman comes up and asks him to get the password and all the rest of it. That's all there. That's lovely. Also, where they shot the Phantom Menace, isn't it?
Right.
There's that shot of Anakin and Padme being all romantic there on the river. I didn't know that until we took that trip, so that was nice. But yeah, because the heavens opened, it kind of like you and I cut that short a little bit, didn't we? Or at least we tried to. And we left a bit early to get something to eat, and then everybody else sort of like came back a little bit, and we had a lovely afternoon having some lunch, and then you and I decided we were going to go back to the villa. And then what happened after that, Brian?
Is that the afternoon we decided to have a walk in the country?
To say the least. I think, so we both started to yomp back to the villa, and then we realised that we were both hopelessly lost and had no idea how to get back to the villa. And I shit you not, we spent 2 hours walking in circles trying to find out where the fuck we were going.
Absolutely soaking.
And then absolutely soaking. And that was the worst bit, because the heavens opened even more, and you and I were walking absolutely soaked through with no shelter whatsoever. And then just by luck, we sort of looped back round to where we started just as everybody else had just finished their dinner, because they came along a bit later than us, so they ate later. And we managed to find our way home thanks to everybody else. But that was an interesting afternoon, very Bond-like. But yeah, we were soaked to the skin.
Let's get out of these wet things.
Oh, he's on a roll today. That was a beauty. I salute you, my good man. Then next up, pretty much the penultimate day, the Friday. You guys went out in a couple of boats on the lake. I was a little bit poorly that day, so I didn't go. I stayed back at the villa and just hung out. Talk to me about that. What was going on? You went to see Mr. White's villa.
That felt just so Bondian, the whole speedboat thing, because we just hired 2 boats. I think it was 6 of us on both of the boats. Went to Mr. White's gaff. Had just pulled up outside in the boat and just thought, this is completely surreal. We all took turns steering the boat, and then just chilling out the rest of the time. But and then we stopped off for lunch and mowed the boats up and went off and had some food and came back. But that whole experience was so, it felt so Bond-like. And then we smuggled a Walther PPK from somewhere, so everybody had an opportunity to pose 007 style on the boat. It was wonderful.
Beautiful stuff. Yeah, I would recommend that place, even if you're not a Bond fan, just to go and have a little. It's nowhere near as pricey as you would imagine
No.
it is. It's very affordable and it is
Mm.
wonderful as well. It's very, very, very good place to be. Cool then. So final day, the Saturday, driving back through kind of Switzerland. We went back through the Furka Pass, and we found what I think this was a super fun thing, because we found the sort of spot where Goldfinger's Rolls Royce pulls up. He stops to get a little bit of a bit of fruit, and then there's obviously the scene where Bond is scoping him out from the road up on high, and then you got Tilly Masterson even higher taking a sniper shot at Goldfinger. We found that exact spot, didn't we? Which was wonderful, and we managed to recreate it. So that took a lot of doing, because there's so many windy roads there. You don't realise
Completely.
the sort of perspective of everything, and we thought we found the point where Bond was stood, but it actually wasn't. He was a little in a slightly different place. And then who was it that found Tilly's sniper spot?
Do you know what? I can't remember who it was now, because we all thought we found it, you see, and we all saying, this is it. And then somebody's walking up a little bit further and said, no, this is it.
Yeah.
And I can't remember who actually found the spot in the end. But it undoubtedly was, once you put the footage together.
It was, and that's one of the beautiful things. So what we did is we went deep on it. So I was driving the minivan, so I drove down to the bottom, and I was Goldfinger with his Rolls Royce, right? So I'm stood down the bottom. Rory, excuse me, Rory's Bond. He's on the middle section. He stood there, hands in his pockets, looking like a badass. And then Chris was right up top, and the rock that Tilly lies out on, she's got the gun. There was some weird stick up there that Chris managed to find, so he used that as his sniper rifle. Looks absolutely identical, and we managed to recreate that shot to a T. Because what makes it even harder is when you see that shot, the camera is right up the top behind Tilly, and then the shot starts off zoomed right in on Goldfinger, and then the camera comes all the way back, past Bond, and there you are at Tilly. And that's what makes it difficult, isn't it? To sort of like really get where it is. But we managed to do it. We got the photo. Looks the business. That was a special moment. I liked it.
It was just wonderful, because it again identical from the film, and to recreate something that was filmed, back in '63, you just think that's
50 plus years ago.
And it was identical. It was just special times.
What's also nice as well is it's actually called, was it James Bond Street or James Bond Road? What is it they call that?
James Bond
Street. There's a little signpost there and a little plaque saying, the scenes from Goldfinger, key scenes from Goldfinger were filmed here. So it's another place that acknowledges it. I like to see acknowledgement of Bond. I don't like to see it not acknowledged.
Yeah.
So that was good.
Yeah.
Took loads of photos, and then it was home time, wasn't it? We went straight back to the airport after that, and off we went. And I must say, when you consider, so we were just talking before we started recording this, we were like, okay, let's just sort of like make sure we don't forget any kind of bits and bobs and all the rest of it. So we kind of listed out all the things we did from arriving in Zurich, doing the whole Piz Gloria weekend and all the rest of it, and then all the stuff afterwards. It's unbelievable how much stuff we fit in. And it has to be said, we have to salute Chris Wright for that, because he is the man that plotted 100%. And planned that whole thing. 100%. You remember that spreadsheet he made? That was unbelievably detailed.
I'd never seen a spreadsheet like it. I thought there was maybe going to be 2 or 3 sections to it, and it just went on and on and on and on, and no stone was unturned. So absolutely, Chris did a bang up job on that.
He certainly did, man. Yeah, we have to salute him for that. And especially wrangling and shepherding 12 of us through Europe for that week was unbelievable. It was really good. And again, you have to give Martin Mulder a huge shout out as well. Indeed. Organising that whole thing. What a logistical nightmare that must have been to shepherd all those people. And Anders needs a shout out as well for shepherding George around, because that, my friend, is a challenge. You can tell with that fella, once he's got a couple of drinks in him, you don't know where he's going to go. You don't know what he's going to say. So that dude deserves at least 1 medal, probably 2 or 3, for keeping that dude under control for that whole time as well.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah,
it was just such a magical time that I remember when we came back on the Saturday evening. I think for the next 2 weeks, no matter what happened in life, it was just dull. It was a massive downer coming back, and it took me a couple of weeks to sort of really get back into the vibe again of just, I don't know, just normal living,
just
really.
living a normal life.
Yeah.
That one is that was such an amazing trip. Like, that would have been an amazing trip even if you just did the Piz Gloria weekend. Even if you took the Piz Gloria weekend away, which was the icing on the cake, let's face it, all the other stuff is like all-time classic bucket list Bond stuff as well, you know? So it's having all of that condensed into like 1 10-day period was just unbelievable, really. It was, what a magical trip that was. Never to be repeated. And, 50th anniversary of Majesty's, what a way to celebrate the birthday.
Yeah, it was just, I don't think it could get any finer than that. We crammed so much bondage into that week that we just could not have done any more. It was brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. Good stuff. All right, then. So that is the OHMSS50 report in the bag. I think everything from the Piz Gloria event, going in the helicopter, me watching you do the bungee jump through my half-closed fingers, all the rest of it, going down to Lake Como, doing the Furka Pass, all of that amazing stuff. Very glad we did it. It was great.
So here's a question, Tom. Would you have done anything differently when you were there?
Do you know what? I don't think I would have. The only thing I would have done differently is I would have been brave enough to do the bungee jump, but I wouldn't be brave enough to do the bungee jump. So I'm kind of lying to myself. I wish I could have done the bungee jump, but I don't think I have it in me because I'm a little bit of a pussy when it comes to things like that. But yeah, in terms of locations and everything, I don't think there's a better way to do it. I think it was bang on the money. What about you? Would you have added or subtracted anything?
I don't think so. I think everything worked out pretty good. I think I would have just had a couple more of earlier nights, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, that's the answer. That is the answer.
But no, apart from that, I think everything was pretty textbook.
All right, very nice, cool stuff. All right, so that about wraps up today's episode of James Bond Radio. Nice little recap of OHMSS50 there. I think Martin is jonesing for a Goldeneye Jamaica trip at some stage in the future. So that will be an amazing one. I think that's my last true top draw bucket list moment for Bond. I think I've done Majesty's, I've done Man with Golden Gun over there in Thailand.
Yeah, I haven't done that one yet, so yeah.
Yeah, those for me, I think are the two big ones. James Bond Island, Piz Gloria, I've got those. I think the last remaining top draw Bond location is Goldeneye. I've not done that yet, so I'm going to be on the list for that one. The other one I think that I really want to see, I wouldn't class it quite on the same league as those, but I do want to go down to Cortina and do some of those Few Eyes Only locations. I want to go and see the old monastery at the top of the rock and all that kind of stuff. I think those are killer locations. I definitely want to do those, but I don't think they're as magical in the same league as Piz Gloria and James Bond Island and Goldeneye. What about you? What's at the top of your bucket list?
I think for me next, it's got to be exactly that. It's got to be Goldeneye Jamaica. I think that's the top. I'm also keen to do the Vegas bits from Diamonds, which I haven't done yet, and of course James Bond Island, which I know obviously you've had the pleasure of doing, but that's definitely, I would say those three are top of my list. I was talking to Sam Allen the other day, and he was basically saying he'd actually been not only to Goldeneye, but he sat at Fleming's desk, and
I've seen the photograph.
Mind blowing.
That is mind blowing, isn't it? I could just imagine when you distill it all down, to sit in that chair at that desk, in that spot, to knowing how mental we are for this kind of shit, that all of it came from the imagination of one dude sitting in that exact spot, on that exact desk, knocking it out on a typewriter years and years before we were even born. You know, that is a pretty trippy moment, isn't it, when you think about it?
Oh yeah, just spine tingling.
Yeah. All right. Well, that hopefully will be in our futures before too long. That'll be a nice little touch. We'll have to do another podcast when that happens. That'll be lovely. But until then, I've been Tom Sears.
I haven't been Chris Wright.
Who have you been?
I've been Brian Dobson.
Indeed, he has. Double O Dobby. Good stuff. And James Bond Radio will return next week. We will see you then.
Bye for now.
Well, this is the problem, Brian, because now I don't know how to say goodbye, because usually it would be a bye, and then I don't know whether that works anymore without Chris. So do I carry on with the bye, or do I say a different bye?
I think you carry on with it.
Do I carry on with it? Let's do it again then. I've been Tom Sears.
I've been Brian Dobson.
James Bond Radio will return next Friday. Bye! Are you going to do a bye?
Oh, bollocks. yeah, sorry. I missed my cue there. Let's go again. Bye!
Hope you enjoyed the show. Good night.